Good evening, all. My name is Leo Saldana. I am with the Environment Support Group in Bangalore. Uh, the reason why we are here today, I don't need to explain. Uh, I mean, Stan was dear to me, and I'm sure he was dear to each one of you. I've had the opportunity as a young student of being able to listen to him uh, when he was a director at Indian Social Institute in Bangalore. And ever since, I've followed his work, as have so many of us. And as and when opportunity gave us, I got the opportunity of going to Jharkhand, I would ensure that I met with him. And Stan was such a man, was so unassuming that the tallness of his, the greatness of his persona and the extensive nature of his work, he wore very lightly. And there's so much we can talk about Stan today, and the fact of the matter is he's dead. And he knew exactly what they were doing to him. And he has made every appeal possible within the framework of law to ensure that it was a struggle for him to be with who he called his people back in Ranchi, so that he could spend time with them and, in a sense, have the dignity that is required in the graceful years of life. And that was denied to him. Ridiculous charges were made against him. And he has explained at length why those charges don't stick to him. Yet he was thrown into Taloja jail, where he spent over 9 months. From October last year, he was in jail. And all along we knew how difficult it was for him to be. Ensured that even to get a sipper to drink water was a task that he had to go to court for. Do this to a elderly statesman that Stan was, or just about anyone. Don't these people have parents that age? Don't these people have family members who are unwell, who need assistance? Some of them may even need a sipper. So the reason I am so angry today is that in some ways I'm horror that he has to go through in the last year of his life. An horror that he was put through not because he in any manner was a threat to anybody. This is a man who could threaten nobody. He was completely defenseless, absolutely selfless, and totally dedicated to what his understanding of life was. And his mission as a Jesuit priest was quite simply to be there, not with any great understanding of where it was going to take him, but with a clear idea that there is a next step to take, and he took that step, and with such determination that nobody could, shake that determination, because it was a very sure step he took. And I don't know what else to say, but I just, was working with my colleagues, and we said, this has to be the turning point. There have been so many horrors that we all have suffered. So many of our comrades and friends and colleagues and activists and lawyers and students and teachers across the campuses of Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Calcutta, you name the place, Hyderabad, Rohit Vemula, so many we can think of. And this horror show has been going on and on and on. And one never imagined that a man who has Parkinson's, who's 84 years old, is a threat to our nation. Or if he's given bail, he will jump bail and run away. Even against the most horrendous of acts, people have been granted bail on humanitarian grounds. And where were these humanitarian grounds when it came to Stan? And today Stan would not want us to sit here and pay tributes to his great life, as he would want us to struggle even more now to not just demand the release of the people, our wonderful friends and activists and lawyers and academicians and trade unionists who are against whom fabricated cases have been foisted as part of the Bhima Koregaon case. And there are many more. Just the other day, Akhil Gogoi was acquitted completely, comprehensively by the court. The NIA has proven time and again that it just doesn't have any case against anybody whom they have framed, be it in Akhil Gogoi's case or Bhima Koregaon, or even in the way in which the Delhi riots cases have been filed. The fact that the bail order itself is so clear in providing evidence almost that there seems to be a there is not seems to be, there is a clear agenda to attack those who stand up for the Constitution, to attack those who stand up for fundamental freedoms, to attack those who stand for the most cherished values of liberty and equality and equity and so on. And we are here with a photograph of Stan. This man should have been free. This man should have been alive. This amazing saint and a great soul that this nation produced, who has struggled to liberate thousands and thousands and thousands of Adivasis and Dalits and so many other vulnerable communities. And today we are holding his photograph up. And I really hang my head in shame because I don't think I did enough. And to me, this is not just a turmoil that I can forget, because if possible, we would all have been out on the streets. And we would have protested the fact that Stan was allowed to die in custody. This is not just a smear on the Constitution, it is a dark chapter in our lives and in our nation's life, and a dark chapter that the Constitution could not avoid. So I think this is a very, very, very deeply troubling phase our country is going through. And I thank so many of you for joining in with just a few minutes of notice. And the way we are going to do this is, we thought it would be nice to have an indefinite tribute for Stan. We don't know what indefinite means. It's as much energy as any of you bring. It can be as long as that. So I request, I could see Admiral Ramdas and Lalita ji there. I would request them to come in and pay their tributes and express their feelings. And then we can go on and on. And I would request that each of you would express your feelings in a couple of minutes or 3 minutes. If you feel like taking 4, maybe fine. But the idea is that everyone gets to express their emotional distress today. Thank you very much for joining.
It's a very sad and a deeply, deeply terrible day we have entered today. I do not know quite the right words to say to express my grief, as also um, to inform all those present here that you have been marvelous in showing your solidarity with the entire country. I hope soon than later. Some of us have got here very quickly, but I think it's very important that we should never forget whatever we have said so in our Constitution. The preamble says it all. We, the people will have to come together and treat each other as brothers and sisters. You know, in the service that I had belonged to, each one of us was in the same ship with the same principle. Either we all swim together or we sink together. And I would like to make this country, which happens to have 7/10 water and 3/10 of land, which we think is so precious. Of course, it is precious, it is ours. But we have to remember that we are all a team. We have to be together. We have to win, and we will win one day, because the truth cannot be hidden for long. You can trample upon systems, you can trample upon people, you can trample upon something else, but ultimately the people's voice do carry weight. And I think Father Swamy was one of those great people who spent his entire life with the backward communities, the Adivasis in Jharkhand, and to arraign him with charges. And then the poor man is not even allowed to come out of that terrible condition. And then to finally, after so, and that to a person who's 84 years old, he was arrested about 7, 8 months, I think, if I recall. He was in prison and thrown as if he was a morsel, somebody. I think even the great Lord, in the world of sincerity, humbleness, and niceties. This is all I think I wish to say right now. There is too much to say. I'm too overwhelmed. Thank you.
Lalita ji.
Leo, thank you so much. It was just coincidental that we saw your message. And this is probably the very first of the many, many, many such meetings that are going to be held, I hope, across this country. Because what this is to me, and it's a very special moment of both a personal sense of loss, a sense of deep indignation, both as someone who has seen at very close quarters the kind of thing that people like Stan Swamy have actually stood for. I had met him many years ago on one of my visits in that area. And it is something that unfortunately we were never in touch after that on a regular basis. But he is someone that no one who has met him even once can ever forget. And there's a very special, deep feeling that I want to share today because it was another Jesuit some 40 years ago who actually was the source of my awareness and my opening my eyes to what were the realities, the truths, the ugliness in this country of ours that we all had to battle and fight. But there were very few, like Stan, who would have been able to give up everything and do what he has been doing. And we have been following what has been happening to him these last 8 to 9 months. We have wrung our hands, we have written petitions, we have raised our voices, but clearly it has not been enough to move the institutions of this great democracy, or which we thought was a great democracy. And it is that we will have to reclaim. I believe there are too many of us who have been silent, people who have the duty, the obligation, and the responsibility to actually speak up, speak out, and say no more. We will reclaim and put the public back into the republic and truly, truly honor and take forward everything that Father Stan Swamy lived for, fought for, and died for. But it's not death. He is with us. I don't believe that he's gone away. It's his message that is going to take us forward. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Lalita ji. I see that Clifton is there. Clifton or Maitreyi, we all work together to bring all of you in this tribute. So I request Clifton to say a few words.
Yeah, thanks. Really, I mean, past few days, and unfortunately, it's become the past few days because I think the kind of outrage that we all expressed when Father Stan got arrested, I think that was October 8th or 9th October. I also know, the kind of outrage at that point kind of died down. I think I'd actually go with what Leo has said. I think while we also, try and reflect on what circumstances have led to this, literally what is an institutionalized murder of Father Stan, we also need to think about what we did and what we perhaps could have done more. And I think more importantly, what we can do going forward. Um, When Father Stan got arrested, in fact, I do belong to a political party, and the MLA from that region was actually talking to Father Stan, and after meeting with him, he had gone back to his to Bagaicha, and that's when the NIA was over there. And so our people went there, and they found that the local police didn't even know that Father Stan was being arrested. And it's only because of the kind of furor that was created over there that all of this happened. Every single step of the way from then till now, it's the entire dehumanization that's taken place. Uh, it's the way in which the kind of a the value of life itself gets reduced at every single step that we've seen. The fact that he had to go to court to get a sipper. And what's even more outrageous, I mean, you could say, okay, it's outrageous that the prison authorities refused to give him a sipper. You could also say it's outrageous that he had to file an application in the NI court to get a sipper. But the NI court then to give 20 days to the court, giving 20 days to the NIA to file objections to that application. I mean, what does that say about it? And we all know that this UAP basically has become like a death warrant. It's just a case that you can just file a case. This Bhima Koregaon, the manner in which these stories have been concocted over there, various dissenters from various parts of the country just picked up, thrown into jail. Some have been in jail now for more than 3 years with absolutely no hope of hope for being let out. And that, I think, one of the Justice AP Shah, in fact, some time ago said this, that the constitution which gave the responsibility of protecting the rights of citizens to the courts, those courts itself now have become the defenders of the regime. So I think it's really, I mean, extremely sad, extremely angry. At one level, you get a sense of helplessness. There's a sense of hopelessness. But I think I'll remember what Father Stan said, when he got arrested. He recorded a video 2 days before that, and that got released, where he said that, I'm not alone in this. I'm part of this game, and I'm not a silent spectator. In fact, he also said that it's not just about me, it's about every single person who disagrees with the system, who's being hounded down by this particular fascist regime. So I would take hope from that. And I think the greatest tribute that we can perhaps pay to Father Stan is to continue this fight ahead, to continue this struggle, because the days ahead seem absolutely, absolutely dark. Every single institution, democratic institution, has been dismantled. All checks and balances are more or less now removed. It is literally a free for all for the Hindutva fascists. So I think drawing inspiration from Father Stan, I think the only tribute that we can pay is to realize that particular world that he fought for. I mean, people like me, I didn't know him too well. I met him just few times, once in Bagaicha and a couple of times in Bangalore. But you just cannot but miss the kind of person that he was, the kind of hope that he always expressed. I thank Leo for actually taking this opportunity to bring all of us together. I think in this time of darkness, we'll all have to stand together, and we'll have to steel ourselves and resolve to fight more. That's all I'd like to share with you today. Thanks, Leo.
Thanks, Clifton. Varun, if you can play the video of Father Stan when he explains why he should not be, when he explains what the NIA did to him and why he should not be in any manner.
जो आज हुआ, मेरी तलाशी पुणे पुलिस के द्वारा, वो हम सबों को बहुत चिंता देने का विषय है। दूसरी बार मेरी तलाशी की गई, और क्या इससे वो पता चलाना चाहते हैं वो भी हम लोगों को स्पष्ट नहीं है। लेकिन मेरी तरफ से किसी प्रकार की सही कानूनी जांच के लिए मैं हमेशा तैयार हूँ। एक स्टेटमेंट तो झारखंड जनाधिकार महासभा की ओर से निकाला गया है, जिसको मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया प्रिंट और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया को भेजा जा रहा है और जो स्टेटमेंट का विषय है, जो बिंदु उसमें लिखे गए हैं, उनका मैं पूरा समर्थन दे रहा हूँ।
Varun, is that all? Yeah. I see a lot of friends around India who have joined. I see Bami Shenoy from Mysore. If you'd like to say a couple of words, we can't see your face because there's a light behind you.
Well, Leo, I'm so shocked that our democracy has come to this one. What an 84-year-old person can do for him to be put in jail and suffer like this. I cannot find words to express how sad I am. And what others said also, that when we fight, we hope that others will join us, but I'm not as optimistic as your friend just now mentioned. We need to do something about it. Instead of getting angry with others, like Mahatma Gandhi used to say, we used to feel sorry for them. How can we human beings think in terms of putting 84-year-old in a jail and not give bail? I really feel so sad. In this connection, I just want to give one small incident which happened a week back. Mysore Grahakara Parishad just gave a press release saying that they are going to ask the authorities to look into the land grabbing activities. The moment it came in the newspaper, the intelligence officer called me and said, "Is that an ad or is that a news release?" I couldn't believe it. These people go and give this kind of statement that intelligence officer waste their time. I said, why are you wasting your time when there are so many other things you should be looking at? And this is what I was reminded of. Sometimes I shudder when we NGOs do like this one, whether we will also put in jail. We need to do something. I do not know what it is. I have started to get fear because of these kind of things. So thank you very much, Leo, for giving me a chance. In fact, now I am not in Mysore. I am actually talking to you from New York area.
Please
Thank you
spread
so
the word
much.
there, and please invite friends there to also share their feelings. Because Stan was not necessarily a man of India, he was a man of the world. Though he
Yes.
didn't travel the world, but he extensively traveled India and worked everywhere where most Indians wouldn't work. So those are the kind of places he chose to work, and over such a long period of time. Yeah, thanks for joining in from there. I see Tara Murli is joined. Would you please come online and share your feelings, please?
Hello, Priya. Oh,
Not
I'm
speaking.
fine.
Kindly mute your Tara. Or if anyone else is ready, please. Yeah, Tara is there.
Leo, I really don't know what to say. I'm not as articulate as all of you. It just breaks my heart that we are seeing such things happen in our country. There is, it really pains me, because what we think of our country and what we think, are its values, and to see what we have descended to. I didn't know Father Stan, but I can well relate, because much of us have got our education from priests, nuns, and others. So I just hope that this will be a wake-up call for all of us. And I really hope we will be able to do something. Thank you.
Uh, thank you. Would anyone come next? You can raise your hand or you can write in the chat box. And somebody called Geeta has written, is Geeta there?
Yeah, yes, Leo.
Yeah, please turn your video on if you don't mind, and you can.
Yeah, very briefly, just before the COVID pandemic started, Stan was in Chennai after he had been visited by the NIA and before he was arrested. And some of us had the chance to listen to what he had to say. I don't know, I have such a heavy feeling in my heart, and I can only think back on that day when we saw him last. I think what is very clear is that people like Stan are a threat to this country, the way this country is being ruled now, because he stands for all those values of constitutional democracy, natural justice, equality, which the rulers of this country fear and they dislike. So Stan is a threat to their version of India. Stan is a threat to the forces that prop them up and which they prop up. I mean, the whole Patalgadi movement is such an assertion of Adivasi right to land and to all that the land contains. And Stan was firmly behind that whole initiative. So clearly, a lot of people had a lot to fear um, as to what Stan was doing, because he was basically telling people that the Adivasis have as much right as the Tatas and the Adanis and the governments that support them to claim what is due to them constitutionally on the basis of the fifth schedule, on the basis of the fundamental rights that are promised to each one of us. But I think more than that, it's also a very unfortunate thing that that a long-standing presence in India, the Jesuits, who've been here since, we all know, since the 16th century, and who contributed a great deal to civilize this place. While, of course, there are a lot of things that one can contend with them as well, but it is also that civilizational presence that this government dislikes and does not want and wants to do away with. Because I come from a state where their presence has been very significant in rousing a lot of young people into public activism, especially in the 80s and 90s. I think ICAF has done a great deal to sort of bring an entire generation of young persons into public life and civic work. And Stan was the finest and most exemplary figure in that respect. And clearly, they don't like him. They find him seditious, therefore. So I think sedition today is a code word in their arsenal, in their lexicon, for everything that we think is right and good and constitutional and valuable about this place that we call our nation. And it's heartbreaking that Stan had to bear the cross. And I just kept going back to the biblical phrase. I mean, who's to be responsible for this? Who has not heard him? You know, and we've all, Clifton was saying that we should review our own responses. I think, yes, we should, because time and again, some people bear the cross for all of us, and we are not there to lend a helping hand or to carry more crosses. I'm sorry if I sound a bit disconnected, but it's an extremely painful thing to have to countenance Father Stan's passing away. Thank you, Leo, for doing this and for bringing us all together.
Thank you, Geeta. May I invite one of my younger colleagues to say what Stan means to them? I'm not saying I'm old, but I'm just saying compared with Stan, I am young. Sana? Okay, well, Sana gets ready. I see that Anita is ready. Please, Anita. I know that you know Stan for a very long time. Anita, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I've been very pained and watching, tracking this news ever since he was taken away. And I remember him very vividly from the last meeting that we had in ISI in Bangalore, when quite a few of us went to meet him and to listen to him. And I was just telling my daughter that, after that meeting, few of us sat down with them and asked him, you spoke so much about your work, but you never mentioned once any concerns about your own safety. And the fact that he had come to Bangalore after the first warrant was out. So since then, this has been so much on our hearts and minds. And today was just, reading the newspaper and then tracking it every hour to see what the news was. So I just want to say that when I first set up Samvada and I came to Bangalore and we would hang out at ISI, and Stan was staying in that cute little building that you see when you used to enter ISI in the old days. And he would sit there and talk to me and listen to, this very young idealistic person thinking about setting up an organization for young people. And he was a sounding board. And I would just end up wandering there without any agenda, hoping that he would have some time to sit and talk and he would listen. And always remember him as being a great listener, spoke very little, but when he spoke, it put so many things into perspective for me. I missed him when he went away from Bangalore. But I think we're all not just grieving. I think there's so much of rage, not just about Stan, but of many others who are there inside. And I don't know whether we are feeling helpless, angry, frustrated, scared. All kinds of emotions are coming out at this point in time. But today I'm grieving. I would say that it's just grief for the horrible way that he had to go. And that last thing when he was asking for his SIPA and almost breaking down in court the last time that he was there, he was pushed and I think tormented. And to me, that was very, very painful to see the way he was being treated towards the end. It was, I don't know, I have no words to describe what one feels when one feels so helpless sitting far away. And I was telling my daughter, I'm feeling so stupid sitting in my house doing some what seems to me inane work sometimes. That's where I am today, and I'm thankful to those of you who decided to put this together. Thank you.
Anita, I just wanted to ask you one thing that, we have seen Stan over time, and I never saw him tired.
Mm.
You would never get a feeling that he was not restless also. There was a sense of calmness that it would just spread around.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, even when they put his name on that list, not that anyone else's names which is on that list is at all justified, but what kind of a mind operates to put this man's name on that list? I mean, the minute you are in his presence, you're completely, any feeling of ill will that you have disappears. Absolutely. This man had no ill will against anybody. I mean, forget the fact that he was a priest or whatever, just as a person as he was.
Absolutely.
So what do you think is what kind of a mind? I mean, should we feel powerless at all?
I don't know how to answer that, Leo, because I don't know if there's a mind at all there. It seems so beastly. I just can't imagine the accusations and what Stan stood for. And the vilification, and a lot of people buying that whole story, not just about Stan, of others, of being responsible for violence and sedition and what they call sedition and all that. It's just antithesis of what Stan stood for. And I think all of us, many of us here, see ourselves as true patriots, and we are the ones who are upholding with the ideals on which this country was built. But we are the ones who are being called seditious, not just today, but over the last few years, we've seen this accusation thrown at us. So it's going to happen that people who upheld values, and Stan was not just about upholding values, like what Leo was saying, it was this whole persona of, that gentleness, which is something very rare. and that gentleness, and with that mind of steel behind it, and that sharp, razor sharp analysis that would come out with that gentleness. He was therefore something very special. So what kind of mind is obviously a mind who does not want to accept that there is a counter view to how we see this country and what we see as justice, or what we see as the nation itself. So this whole thing is about trying to frighten people like us. It is about that at the end of the day.
Would you like to go? Yeah, I can't see you clearly, but please, you waved your hand.
Yeah, hi Leo, I'm Jaspal from Cambridge.
Yes, I couldn't recognize you for a minute. Thanks
Yeah,
for joining in from Cambridge.
We are all very outraged at this actually state-sanctioned murder, and hope and trust that this will unite all the people who are fighting for the rights of all. And we pay tribute to Father Stan Swamy for indomitable fighter for the rights of people. Thank you very much for organizing this forum. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaspal. Chokku, I would request anyone who would like to say a word or two to please put your hand up so we can recognize it and invite you to speak, please.
Leo.
Yeah, if you can turn your video on so we can see you.
I'll do that. In the meantime, just stunned, and I don't know. I don't find words. It's atrocious. I didn't know him in person, but been following his work. Just stunned. There's nothing we can do to with the government. That I don't know. I wish we can do something. This government is just letting people die or even aiding death. It's terrible. Thanks for doing this, Leo.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we felt as soon as we heard the news, I mean, for me, the fact that the news came was not surprising, because at his age, to put him on a ventilator was as good as telling us all that there is very feeble chance of him coming out alive. And there was a hope in me on Saturday that when news went around that he was really very sick. I have heard judges get up in the middle of the night and give bail for some journalists sometimes. Some hearings have gone on into the middle of the night, out of turn, and so on. What made me wonder is why that privilege was not extended to Stan. What crime at all did this man commit that he did not deserve at least that much privilege? And if this is this is an indication of where we are as a so-called law-abiding, due process of law society. Yes, at the one hand, it is rather frightening that abuse of power can, I mean, everybody knows this case is not a case at all. Because if there was a case and a man has got Parkinson's and is 84, any investigating agency anywhere in the world would have rushed to produce evidence, unless it was a tyrannical state. The fact that this happened to Stan, is it that we are now rushing towards that kind of state of affairs? Yes, many things have gone wrong in this country in recent years, but one never expected this level of inhumanity. And I see, as I say this, Rosama has posted a note, and I would invite Rosama to come in next. But before that, I want to say that, Akhil Gogoi got bail, was acquitted after a very, very long and arduous process. And he gave an interview to a media channel. And he basically said his life from that moment on, when he became to demand the repeal of this draconian UAPA law. So Rosama, would you like to weigh in on that? Because I see that you have typed in a note. Are you there? Okay, I see Ashish. Would you like to say a couple of words? As the next person gets ready to speak, I don't know who's coming in here from Daily Dumb, but if you'd like to read out, say it in your own words, what you have typed in, uh, because I don't see a image, I just see Daily Dumb.
Yeah, yeah, Leo. No,
Who's
I'm
this?
just, I have no words. I'm just like
Yeah, but who is this? I can't see your name.
Poonam.
Oh, I Poonam. Yeah, thanks for joining.
No, it's
Yeah.
just like words fail me literally. And I don't understand why, like you say, judges didn't get up, the prison official didn't get up. I mean, what is it about us that we can watch this? I don't know. It's heartbreaking.
Joe. I also see Matthew Udikula. There's so many people I see, but I don't see their hands up. It would be helpful to know. Vasanta ji.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I'm not good at this Zoom business. I wanted to say that I have not been following everything that's happened to Stan, but I have heard enough to make me feel sick. And well, that sickness seems to be part of the nausea a lot of us are feeling and have been feeling for many years now. And it is because our digestion has never been very good when it comes to the basic, to digesting the meaning of being together as a country. We haven't understood it, and we have allowed things to happen. And what the other person said about feeling stupid, yes, I feel very stupid. I feel as if I haven't made use of all the inputs over so many decades before independence and after that, the consciousness that is built of modern India and change. We haven't digested it, and now we're really sick. And how it's going to affect our children is what I'm thinking of. An 84-year-old person who was died in such circumstances after standing for what was right. He did it for the children of India. For the children of India, for my children, your children. What is going to happen to our children if this is what they're going to see? Where is this India, India that we built? And it is a very precious thing. And let me go on to this religion, because I have to talk about it. Look here, what is this religion? What is this religion that divides us? And which is claimed not to divide us, as you can see from today's paper. I won't quote the person. He says there's no division. He says we should not get trapped in a cycle of fear. Why are we in denial about what is happening? Why are we not ashamed of it? Why are we not seeing it as an insult to those very values which we value in our so-called Hinduism? Those things. Is this India going to last? This India to which I came back to my children. This India we have built. What is Satyameva Jayate? Where is Satyameva Jayate? I don't know what else to say. I don't know the person, but it makes me cringe to think that a person like that could have been treated like this. And this happened to him, and he's not the only one. There's so many whose names are not going to be known. There's so many whose names we've forgotten already, although we heard about it. What do we thought about Gauri Lankesh right here in Bangalore where I live? What about all these people? And what's the point of my spouting like this? I feel stupid, I'm sorry. I feel as if I have let down this heritage of mine, with yours, my children's, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to it. This is not my religion. If I don't want to be Hindu if I can't be human. If it's going to come in between myself, my humanity, I don't want it. I don't need it. That's all I want to say. And I can't say anymore because it's not just for Stan Swamy I'm feeling it. I'm feeling for all the other people, so many of them. But he was a very gentle and wonderful person, a simple person who did what he could do. And I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm feeling bad, sick as I said. Sorry.
Thanks for expressing your feelings, Vasantaji. I think we all share the same pain. I wanted to check if Abhibula ji could share a few thoughts about what we are all going through now. Sir, your video, please. Thank you.
Yes, well, it's kind of you to ask me to say something. I have no authority. I'm only, like all of you, just another Indian, ashamed at seeing what my India has come to mean. Here was a man who I hope will be recognized for being a martyr, a man who was simple, a man without ambition, a man who did what he felt he could do for people who needed it. And what did we give him in return? Like you and me, he was also just another Indian. So what can I say? I can only join you in praying that he will be at peace. Perhaps it is a liberation for him to no longer have to suffer the travails of indignity, humiliation, all of which he stood up to. I mean, when one read of him and about his time in prison, one could only admire him. And what was it all for? It was all for the poorest, the most excluded, the least privileged amongst us, Indians, and seeking no reward except perhaps a recognition, instead of which we prosecuted him under an anachronistic criminal justice system. And all the mechanisms that for so many years, beginning with our independence and the promulgation of India's constitution, we all thought we were working towards building into India, not only as the world's foremost, largest democracy, which we've been, of course, for such a long time, but also the world's foremost democracy, only to find that very concept of democracy itself, which we have all together built, would allow this. I think I'll close here. Thank you for having allowed me to say a few words. I never met Stan Swamy. Of course, that was my own loss. But he is now gone down in the annals of India's history as a martyr, not to his religion, not to a particular community, not even for those he worked for, but a martyr to India, the India which we all sought to build. And I believe that will, despite vicissitudes, despite present difficulties, will build. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you speak for all of us when you call him a martyr. Claude, I see you there. Claude Alvarez.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
Leo.
can turn video on, please. Yeah.
Well, thanks for organizing this meeting at short notice, because I've joined it only because I wanted to be part of this community of people grieving today and spending some time thinking about Stan, thinking about us, thinking about people in general, what type of government we have produced, what type of parliament we have produced, what type of judiciary that we have produced after more than 70 years of so-called independence. And I am not always mournful when people depart. As the previous speaker said, that sometimes these things don't matter to him or her at all, because they have already gone and they are no longer able to feel pain or distress or express what they want to. And it's we who have to do it, because they are no longer capable. I think that Stan, and even for many, many years in the ISI, we used to go and stay there at the ISI. He had this very, all of us social activists don't have much money. So ISI used to be our favorite roost, and he and Barreto had this place which was so remarkable, so remarkably cheap. I think it was used to pay about 50 rupees a day for accommodation and for food and breakfast and everything. And I was surprised that a few years later, Stan was ready to migrate at his age to work out of Bangalore in some remote Adivasi district. And I said, my God, this is incredible. I can't believe somebody, most of us who reach that age want to actually go and settle down in some comfortable place with their sons and daughters or grandsons or whatever it is. But here's a guy doing just the reverse. Even he's going out at that age to live with Adivasis. And well, I think he was in that sense a perennial activist. You couldn't get activism out of him. He was, even when I remember him at ISI and numerous meetings, he was always very lean. I mean, unlike many of the activists I know, including myself, we developed some sort of a slight midriff paunch, which I have got rid of now after several months of intermittent fasting. But in his case, he never degenerated to the state in which you find most activists today. He was always very lean. He ate very little. He had no consideration of things like food. And he was the archetypical missionary, but missionary not in this very, very banal Roman Catholic sense of these priests and nuns who still think that the world should be converted to Christianity in order to save their souls. He was not in that category at all. I mean, that didn't move him. I don't think it ever came into his head that he should, baptize somebody to Christianity. I think he was more interested in seeing that somebody was able to be himself or herself, able to exercise her rights to be a decent human being at a decent place in this society, and not be taken for anything by cops and by gundas and by union leaders and by politicians and all sorts of the gang wars that keep on going on all the place. He wanted, and he said that when he was in prison, as a matter of fact, he said that what I'm appalled is that there are many people who really don't even know what they are charged for. They are here sitting in this jail. They are under trial, but they don't know what they are charged for. And we have got so many hundreds of activists and human rights activists. And as I said, as the collective conversation goes, I don't know sometimes whether we should, really stop all the other things that we do and spend more time, more energy, more skills that we have on issues like, I'm not even worried about education. I'm just worried about the numbers of people who really end up in cages and in prisons and in dungeons, and nobody to really represent their cause, nobody to come and look after them, nobody come to inquire about them because even their families have forgotten about them and so on. And I really feel today it's a good time to reflect on this and say that when are we going to prioritize life in that sense? He had already done it. He had prioritized because he just left everything in Bangalore and walked off and said, I'm going. I mean, my heart drives me to a place where I think I can do something and where I can improve people's lives, not in a sense of getting a development project or digging a well or something, but actually helping them to get empowered, to fight, to struggle, to represent their cause, to get lawyers for them and all that. So I think in that sense, it's a life worth living, and it's a life actually worth celebrating. As 84 years old. There are so many people who are 60 years old who have screwed up their lives entirely, who have, they've got nothing to show for it, no footprint to show for it. But at 84, this is an extraordinary life and something that should be celebrated. I know that there is a somber mood at this meeting because he has died, and he has died suffering as a human being, physically suffering, and there's been a state which does not have a soul, it does not have a heart, and is not able to feel these things anymore. So, okay, that's sort of accepted. But we have to celebrate his life. And I think the only way to celebrate his life is to reorient and to figure out how as a group we can deal with these issues that have been put on our plate by the present political dispensation, the UAPA and all these other obnoxious laws that have been coming up, the farm laws and so on, to build up a massive sort of a coalition. I think, what would he have liked? I mean, he wouldn't like us to all sit and commiserate and really feel angry about what has been done to him. I mean, he was always matter of fact, because as a human being, he had very little to own. He had nothing. He had no ownership of things. I mean, he didn't. I don't think when he was traveling, he had a very small briefcase sort of a thing. I don't think he had 5 or 6 shirts even. He was that type of a guy. I mean, so we tend to lose much more, but he in that sense, he was. I mean, I think that's something about him that if it can inspire us to all together and work harder to get UAPA repealed, to work harder to put pressure in the social media and to see that judges are conscientized, like these 2 excellent Delhi High Court judges who passed this extraordinary judgment, that I would anyway like to do something more in this area, and I think that it's about time, because we have spent too little time on these issues and too much time on even what I call the luxury issues. And Stan is there and he is saying, well, I'm going, now let's see what you guys and what you women are going to do. So I am thankful for his life, and I'm thankful for being privileged to have known him and for being touched by his life, for being edified by his life. It's very difficult to be edified today by almost 90% of the planet, but he is in the bracket, edifies, and to use also this massive upswelling of emotion that will be developing in in the next 24 hours as people begin to discover what has happened, to use it to launch something for just not to shame the government, but if necessary to knock this government down. Some stage we have no other option. It's time to put our act together and to ensure that this dispensation goes and never come back again. I think that would be something which he would be most happy about. So I think in the end, these things didn't seem to affect him at all. And from his outward demeanor and his sense of interaction, confidence, even in the worst of times, never complaining at all. Merely saying that they have not given me my SIPA or things like that. But I'm saying never, and more, even in that situation, more worried about the others. It is clearly an extraordinary event. I'm thankful for having known him, and I'm thankful for being part of this meeting to celebrate his life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claude. Sundar Dhritiman Chatterjee, I see what you've written. Can you please turn your video on and share your thoughts, please? Are you there, Sundar? He was here a minute ago, maybe you've seen now. I just saw John Reyes join in. I know you knew when you worked with Would you be able to share what you feel with us now?
I don't have the heart to say much. I just joined. I heard ignored last few sentences, and I agree entirely with what I was just looking at some photographs of events in Ranchi that he was always there. He was also there with all sorts of events, but in particular,
this one only one we give. Then if you don't see any story,
events on communal harmony. For example, Sajakadam was an effort in 2017 to work on communal harmony. He was there. He was always there on the street, in meetings. And in the charge sheet, the summary charge sheet against him, one of the accusations is that he promoted enmity between groups on grounds of religion, caste, and community. Now that sums it all up. I mean, you don't have to read further. I've actually read the entire supplementary charge sheet line by line, but you don't have to do that. I mean, if you just read that particular accusation, knowing Stan, you know that it's all nonsense. So, as Claude said, I think we have to not just mourn him, but do something, not just in this particular case, but also for all the under trials. He's a symbol of the injustice that is being done to under trials across the country. The great irony that in the last few years, he worked particularly for justice for under trials, and then he became an under trial himself and died. This is all I can say. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Jean. Shalmali? Shal, are you there?
I'm here. Hang on, let me just try to see if I can get my video to work. Sorry. Can you see me?
Not yet. Yeah, now we can see
You
it.
can see me? Yeah. I don't, but you know, like others, like I said earlier, I really, words fail me. I don't know what to say. You know, and I just want to echo what others have already said, but before me, you know, before, and what we've been saying for a long time, that we have to fight this system, we have to fight this system. How do we fight this system? What shall we do? You know, I mean, if somebody as gentle as Father Stan, if this can happen to him, and there are, and as others have said, there are so many others that this is happening to, you know, one after the other, like with Professor Sai Baba, or with whoever, whatever is the gravity of the charge. Firstly, the entire legal system has been manipulated in such a way that people are not innocent until proven guilty. The whole, you know, the whole UAPA, the whole sedition, then that this entire mechanism that we are dealing with, just the whole, earlier you remember, it was the National Security Act. How many of our friends from Manipur in the Northeast were arrested under that? How many people working in tribal areas? How many people were working for workers' rights, you know, for gender rights, for hijras rights, for sex workers? How many people have been just arrested under some National Security Act or something, you know? And the assumption is that they throw you in the lockup and that's it, you know, knowing how slowly the system works. And I think that one of the biggest tributes we can pay to Father Stan is to, over the next few days, come up with some kind of a, come up with some kind of plan, some kind of action with which we take on the state. We have to do it. File a public interest litigation against the government for endangering its people, for murder. You cannot arrest people and just throw them in jail and not give them medical support when they need it. And in the middle of COVID, you can't do that. I don't know. I think Claude and Jean-Andreas and I don't know all of you. There are so many activists on our call today. I joined really to be part of the community. I'm sorry, I didn't really mean to say, I'm not saying anything new. So I really joined to be part of this community and to say that every loss of every great person, every activist, whether they're well known or not, everyone who's fighting for justice is a loss to our society and a loss to our conscience. And with Father Stan, it's felt particularly because of who he is, And as Claude said, he has gone. And what will we do to commemorate him? Let's take action. Let's plan something. Let's figure this out together. Thanks.
The fact that so many of us have, with just 10 minutes notice, joined to recall, remember, be angry that this man died in custody is itself indicative of not helplessness, but a sense of togetherness, despite the most horrendous forms of separation that have been enforced on us. The pandemic is true, but it's also been used to suppress dissent. It has been used to suppress prisoners' rights. And as you said, Shal, put people in cramped prisons. I'm just reading out names of all those who have been part of the same case that Stan was framed in. Sudha Bharadwaj, Anand Teltumbe, Shoma Sen and Annie Babu, Varavara Rao, Mahesh Raut, Sudhir Davle, Surendra Gadling, Gautam Navlaka, Rona Wilson, Arun Ferreira, Vernon Gonsalves. And then there are members of the Kabir Kala Manch, Sagar Gorke, Ramesh Gaichor, and Jyoti Jagtap. But these are people who have been noticed because they have done incredible work and struggled throughout their lives for fundamental rights and fundamental freedoms for others. There are hundreds more who are faceless, be they Adivasis or Dalits or Muslims or minorities. There seems to be a pattern in the way that the prison has been used as a means to crush any form of sovereignty and distinctiveness and plurality and syncretism. Anyone who speaks the true values of India is seen as a threat to this establishment. So I think the best way we can pay tribute to Stan is to continue to speak as he spoke, fearlessly, and with such great clarity and such simple language. I think that's the language of the people, and he always spoke that language. I do see Rajesh Mahapatra wants to say a couple of words. Please come in. Rajesh.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Turn your screen on.
Thank you, Leo, for organizing this. I just, when I put in that request, I was thinking of some things, but I think a lot of that has already been said. I put on the chat box that, a man lives as long as he's remembered. And Father Stan is going to live for a long, long time. His memory is going to be there with us for a long, long time. But how do we want to remember him? I think what Claude said, that in his departure, he has left a very important message for you. He has told all of us, I have done my bit. Now it's your turn to do your bit. And I completely agree with Claude that perhaps we are not doing enough because we haven't gotten our priorities clear yet. We talk about all those things, but we don't really set our priorities accordingly. I see a lot of pain and anger being expressed here, and I don't think we should allow our energy to be consumed by this anger and pain. I think if anything that I remember, I have never met Father Stan, but every time as a journalist, whenever I used to kind of come across his activities, and even in this course of this entire saga, the only image that I remember is an image of calmness, as if he knew that, for the values and principles that he stood for, he had to encounter this at one point in time or the other. It is futile to think that you would live an entire lifetime upholding these values and principles, and it will be a smooth journey. It is not going to be a smooth journey. At some point in time, you'll hit a road bump or a wall, or the kind of things that we are now seeing. So he knew that this would come. He was not surprised, and he was calm, and that calmness is what we need. We need strategy. We need to be very clear as to what we are up to. It is a political fight. We have to be clear that it is a political fight. But then people ask, how do we fight? Now, the moment we have to understand what is this politics all about. This is the politics of fear. And the politics of fear is played by regimes that are essentially insecure. And if a regime is insecure, that must give us a sense of confidence that that regime, which is insecure, is not there for all time to stay, provided we fight. The moment we ask the question, how do we fight the system? That politics of fear has won. We have considered defeat. Just start fighting. But start fighting in a different way. And I think in Stan's departure, the message is loud and clear. We have to preserve our energy. We have to move calmly. We have to lean back on our own history to see that how nonviolence, how peaceful protests, how, showing forgiveness, not anger, showing pity rather than sharing your pain has actually changed the course of this country in the past. And it will, we will have to fight another war of independence, and we should fight it with peaceful means. And that's the message that is coming out from here. And I completely agree with Claude. This is not a day to mourn. This is a day to celebrate everything that Father Stan stood for, but take it forward. Take it forward in a concerted, strategic, and confident manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Subir Sinha, when you write, let us not forget that the Home Minister has explicitly said that he does not believe in, quote, the West's concept of human rights, unquote. Would you like to share your thoughts, Subir Sinha? Yes.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Leo, for inviting me to speak. I never met Father Stan Swamy. However, I went to schools in places like Jamshedpur and Patna and Dhanbad, where I met many people like Father Stan Swamy, who were people who were committed to fighting for those who are basically facing a process of continuous dispossession over the last several decades. For a while, I worked with Father Tom Kocheri. Obviously, he's no longer with us. So I'm aware of the dedication that people like Father Stan Swamy have had, and their sort of happy willingness to serve those who are least catered for in our society, who are still lacking the power that they can speak on their own behalf or to defend themselves. So that is on the one side. And on the other side, yes, I see in the chat people have mentioned G.N. Sai Baba, one could have mentioned Varavara Rao, one could have mentioned countless other activists who are under threat. And we are basically facing a regime which has no regard for human rights. It has no regard for democracy. It is quite happy to have this kind of information about itself seen worldwide. And a time when spaces within the judiciary and the media have shrunk. I mean, we still see terms like urban Naxal and so forth used very, very casually. And people should realize that when they use this kind of language, they are actually creating the grounds for what happened with Father Stan. They are not just words that people can use loosely. These are words that create consent for the state's brutalization of dissenters, and therefore we must combat the use of this kind of language, because apart from resisting the advances of the state in a direction which is decidedly authoritarian, if not fascist, we need to be aware that casual use of language in the media, in public and private conversations like this, has made us almost numbed us to the direction in which society seems to be traveling. While this has happened today, we should also remember that only earlier on in the morning, we have had ruling party members giving statements about what should happen to Muslims. For example, Mr. Shivpal Singh Amu, the new BJP spokesperson from Haryana. So combating this, I think, needs to go, obviously, as everyone here has said, take the legacy of Father Stan, learn from his life and his courage, but to fight the gathering forces of fascism on all possible fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Subir. And Madhuri, you write conviction under UAPA is less than 2%. I think that says it all. That is why the UAPA is alive under this regime. Would you like to share some more thoughts on what this means going forward? Because I think there is a clear message that is coming out from this conversation we are having, unfortunately, due to Stan's death, not because he's with us, but he will always be with us as long as we fight draconian laws and draconian power. So could you please share your thoughts about this? Are you there, Madhuri?
Yeah, sorry, I had trouble unmuting. I do endorse what everybody is saying, that we need to celebrate what Stan stood for, not just mourn him. The Bagaija research team brought out a very comprehensive report under Stan's leadership in 2015 as to what Adivasi under trials were going through, why Adivasis were being arrested for fighting for their land, and forests. A huge number of Adivasis were being arrested and what they were going through in prison. I think, this is the kind of work because of which Stan was arrested. And it is the horrible tragedy and of our times that he was ultimately murdered by exactly the same forces that are brutalizing the Adivasis that whom Stan stood with. So when we have data that conviction under UAPA is less than 1.8%, and everybody knows this, everybody knows that there is absolutely no evidence, and we have now a system in which without a trial, without any evidence, you can throw people into jail and throw away the key. There are more than 7,000 prisoners now under UAPA facing the same kind of injustice. So I really think that we need to now, as other friends have said, this is a time to absolutely tighten our belts and to now start with a greater determination and greater focus to start fighting for our democracy, start fighting for our constitution, for the right to liberty, to the right to freedom, to the right to freedom of expression. This fight is a long fight, and we stand, I think what Stan's message to us, which we need to carry, and the strength that he has given us, is to continue this fight. And, some of his friends are remembering today, from the Bible, the quotation from Timothy, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. I mean, who more than Stan among us can say this? And I think he's blessed. I think his life has been blessed because he has gone with his head unbowed, with his spirit unbroken, saying, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. I would like to go by being able to say that. I can't think of any more blessed way to go than to be able to be able, when I die, to be able to say that. I think many of us would feel the same way. That's all. Thank you. Rest in peace and power, Stan, and we will continue your work.
So much, Madhuri. Thank you. I invite Dhritiman Chatterjee, and after Dhritiman would be Shruti Bala.
Thank you, Leo. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yeah. Slight echo, but we can hear you.
Difficult to say anything at a time like this. I am speaking on behalf of ordinary citizens of this country who are realizing in every walk of life that the state is acting with absolute impunity, without any kind of justification, is that the state is saying that we will do exactly what we want. So it is ordinary citizens. I'm not talking about activists. I'm not talking about people with radical opinions. I'm talking about ordinary citizens. To retain their dignity, ordinary people have to be guided how to resist. There is no other way than resistance. Resistance in a dignified, peaceful way, but resistance is the way. For instance, I am now in Goa. I just heard Claude speak. I would appeal to Claude, I'm sure he's doing it, to organize a public meeting. Public meetings have to be organized everywhere. And ordinary people, I keep on stressing ordinary, not just the activists that we know of and admire, obviously, but ordinary people have to stand up and say, enough is enough. We have a right to a dignified life. Let me say another thing, that is, we have this tendency to depend on political parties to do things for us. I think this last incident, this incident of absolute carelessness and impunity, is demonstrating that there is very little point in depending on political parties. Whatever has to be done, we have to do ourselves. Leo and others, the very fact that I am saying this and what others have said at this forum and are going to say, we have come to the stage that even these statements can be grounds for arrest, and arrest without explanation, arrest without redress. We have to realize that we have come to that stage. And ordinary people, I know I'm repeating myself, but ordinary people have to come forward and resist. That's all I'm, let up.
Thanks, Sundar. Shruti Bala, you're also speaking on behalf of International Solidarity for Academic Freedom in India. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I join you as a member of the collective International Solidarity for Academic Freedom in India, INSAF India. We are a collective of academics and concerned citizens based in universities around the world. Yesterday, we had planned to hold a 24-hour international prayer vigil for Father Stan Swamy. Unfortunately, time has run out. In his last hearing on May 21st, where his plea for bail on medical grounds was rejected, Father Stan had told the court, and I quote, "I will probably die here very shortly if things go on as it is. It's a very difficult moment for me. Whatever happens to me, I would like to be with my own. Father Stan's own are spread all over the world. He is known for his lifelong fight for the Adivasis in India. We are his own. We want to stand up with him as he stood to fight all his life. But here we are in a memorial, in a mourning, in a moment of celebration and mourning and grief and collective outrage. Mourning what can only be described as state murder. When arrested 8 months ago, Father Stan had said, what is happening to me is not something unique. It's a broader process that's taking place all over the country. We are all aware how prominent intellectuals, lawyers, writers, poets, students, and ordinary citizens are put in jail because they have expressed their dissent or raised questions about the ruling powers in India. Father Stan said he's happy to be part of this process and not be a silent spectator. The Modi government has made him pay that price. If this does not shake the world's conscience, what will? All of us concerned Indians and concerned citizens around the world need to come together now to keep this struggle alive. And I echo the sentiments that have been raised here in this meeting. This struggle to which Father Stan had dedicated his life, the struggle for democracy and social justice and for upholding the Indian Constitution. Rest in power, Father Stan. Thank you.
Thank you, Shruti. I invite my colleague Malvika to speak on from a perspective which only they can, from that space that they now occupy, share. Malvika.
I think so many people have already expressed their outrage and anger and so many different emotions. Some have spoken in positive terms, some have spoken in not so positive terms, but everywhere I see, to my eyes, I can only see hope. A person, people might think that, you know, like especially in the circles that I come from, civil society work, activism, speaking up for the rights of the marginalized or the oppressed, it's all, if not looked down upon, it is not understood. People think, why do you need to do this? What are you gaining from doing this? These are the kinds of questions that I have faced in the very short time that I've spent in this environment. But cases like Father Stan's and every single injustice that I read about or hear about every single day, they only reaffirm in my heart that where I am, what I'm doing is correct or needed in some way. That I'm not completely wrong or stupid or foolish to believe that it is what I'm doing is something that is needed. At least in my heart, I believe that Father Stan would approve of young people like us speaking up, standing up, working to correct the injustices that we see around us. And I know that he was in some ways perhaps dejected, but in some ways always hopeful. And when I read the letters that he shared from prison, speaking about how he saw humanity and God in his fellow prisoners, and always, and even fighting, he was fighting right till the end. He had filed He had challenged the constitutionality of the UAPA very, very recently, and the case was being heard in court when it was announced today that he had passed. So I feel that what we are doing is not completely wrong, and I feel anger, I feel outrage, but I also feel determined to keep going and keep tackling the challenges that are thrown our way, one after the other, with such speed and such astonishing speed. So this is all that I would, yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Leo?
Yeah, sorry, I unmuted myself. I was just saying, Malvika, that thanks. If you mentioned letters that Stan wrote, and he wrote it when I read those letters, and when all of us read those letters, it was not about him, but he was actually arguing for fundamental freedoms and using himself to argue for those fundamental freedoms. It was never about him, but he used his own condition. So if you have one of those letters, can you read it out for us?
Yeah. In one of his, just, I would, okay, this is one excerpt. I don't know whether this is an excerpt or the full letter, but I would read it nevertheless. He wrote,
Pick up, you're not loud enough.
Okay. He wrote, I deeply appreciate the overwhelming solidarity expressed by many people around the world in these 100 days in prison. Sometimes the news of so much solidarity has given me immense strength and courage, especially when the only certain thing in prison is uncertainty. Another source of strength in these last 100 days has been to observe the difficult situation of the other prisoners awaiting trial. Most of them come from economically and socially disadvantaged communities. Many of these poor people do not even know what charges have been brought against them and have never seen their indictment. They remain in prison for years without any legal assistance. Overall, almost all prisoners are forced to live with the bare necessities, rich or poor. This condition creates a sense of brotherhood and solidarity in the community of prisoners. One learns that it is possible to support one another in spite of adversity. We 16 co-defendants cannot meet because we are housed in different prisons or in different departments within the same prison. But we will continue to raise our voices in the future. A caged bird can still sing. This was one of his letters that he wrote from prison.
A caged bird can sing. Thanks. I see Vijayan and I know he can sing. Is there something that you can sing in memory of Stan, Vijayan? Or say what you feel like?
No, Leo, it's very difficult. I'm sorry. Sorry to disappoint you. And without a Stan, it's yeah. I mean, we all somewhere knew this was coming, and I think somewhere there's also this whole whole pressure one feels of amidst COVID, amidst all this that is happening around. How much did each one of us do to make sure that if he was to go, he should have gone as, at least in some senses, as a free man. He went in that enslaved category fighting this battle. So that's making it very difficult to, otherwise what should ideally be a celebration of his life and resistance today has actually become a mourning. I've always believed in celebrating when people go away, but in stands, it's becoming very difficult to do that. Sorry, Leo. Thank you.
I mean, I can.
Thank you for organizing this evening, because I think it's important that we all come together and feel the pain, share the pain, and really, I mean, not just speak about resistance, but if these criminals, these murderers can't be thrown off from their chairs, there is no way we can celebrate lives like that of Stan.
Yeah, Deepak Dolakia from the Indian Community Activist Network. Deepak, are you there? I also see that Meera, I don't know which Meera this is, because there are 3-4 Meeras, but it's a post of the report on the study of under trials. If you're there, if you could just share some of your thoughts about this study and also what it means in this context. Is Meera there?
Yeah, Leo.
Yeah, please.
It's actually, I share the pain and I mean the overwhelming nature of the current moment, and it's actually very difficult to speak. So I agree with what Vijayan and other comrades are saying. I've just been listening in two comrades speaking in the other meeting, which is being organized by ISI friends as well, and here, and I mean the immense loss of losing a moral giant like Stan, I think is, I don't know if we will ever be able to come to terms with this kind of loss. I mean, one is beyond words to think of. I mean, I was just thinking some time back, we lost someone like Mahavir Narwal. I mean, such an ideal father. Today we lose someone like Father Stan. So, I mean, the kind of gems that this fascist regime is taking away from us, I think these are, I mean, even beyond murders. I mean, we can't even call it a murder. It's a very different kind of crime that I don't know how are we going to hold the regime accountable for, how are we going to compensate the vacuum that these comrades are leaving behind, but also agree with many comrades that we have to, I mean, there's no other way but to continue to do the work that they've all been trying to do, the values that they've been living for. And what Madhuri also spoke and referred to, it was in that context that I posted that study. It was in 2015, and a very detailed study on the large number of under trial Adivasi prisoners. This is a phenomena very common to the entire Adivasi heartland, and this detailed study was done by the Bagaicha team in Jharkhand, led by Father Stan and Father Solomon, Tony, and all of them. And based on that, public interest litigation was filed, and it was very meticulously followed up by Father Stan and his team. And it is very true that precisely in that context that these trumped up charges were leveled against him, because that and the study itself was a very scientific study. I mean, pointing out with documentation and evidence as to how without any form of evidence for long periods, young Adivasis have remained in incarceration. And such an irony that Father Stan himself was put in this kind of an incarceration without, for more than, for such a long period. I mean, the BK case has gone on for 3 years. Father has been, he was hounded for a long time before and then jailed since October last. So for almost close to little less than a year, he was incarcerated. The trial really didn't begin at all, and then multiple bail petitions rejected. And I mean, it also exposes the hollowness of the legal system, not just the brutality of a law like UAPA, but also, I mean, how weak the judiciary actually is in the light of the kind of draconian laws that this country allows to be passed and imposed on people who are actually fighting for the rights of some of the most marginalized. I just want to very quickly remember one instance. 2 years back, when we were part of the Samvidhan Saman Yatra, we went to Bagaicha, the place where Father actually lives and works from in Ranchi, and late into the night, we stayed there for almost 2 days. So late into the night, it was almost, I think डेढ़ 2 baje, 2 a.m. and half of the yatris had fallen a bit. They were actually tired and asleep and all, but father was going on and he was reading like every line from the PESA Act, Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act. This year is 25 years since the PESA Act was enacted first in 96 after a long struggle. And he was pointing out to so many instances of how multiple provisions of the PESA Act, which is supposed to be a protective legislation for Adivasi areas, is being violated. So I mean, that image comes so vividly to me so many times. I mean, at 2 a.m., he had that youthful energy to explain to this whole team of people, and with such chaste Hindi, to be honest. I mean, we were also surprised that this gentleman from Tamil Nadu, I mean, of course, he lived for many decades in Jharkhand, and therefore his Hindi also, his language, I mean, the kind of Hindi that he spoke was, it impressed a lot of our other comrades from many of the Hindi states. He spoke with such detail and evidence of how the act is being violated. So I think, to cut a long story short, it is these struggles, whether it's the report of the under trial prisoners, whether it is the continued non-implementation of laws like PESA that are unfinished agendas. I mean, even recently we've seen whether it is the Patalgadi Andolan, which Adivasis have led heroically, or it is the recent Silgar Andolan in Chhattisgarh. There are so many struggles happening. Even as we speak, Hirme Markam, an Adivasi comrade from Chhattisgarh, is in jail. So I think these are all issues that we must continue to fight. Yes, it is a moment of pain and absolute inexplicable anguish and anger that someone like Father Stan has been taken away from us. But I think he will continue to live on with us in our struggle in defense of the rights of Adivasis, of Dalits, of all oppressed people. And we must, with the leadership of people from oppressed identities, continue to fight this just battle. I think that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Meera. Rajendra Narayanan.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. I don't have anything new or different to add, except that it's really shaken the core in ways that I can't even express. I don't know. It's just an array of things, right? It's not just the fact that a person was denied, a person was just illegally taken away in the manner he was at the age that he was, and the fact that he was denied the very basic humanitarian things like wanting to drink from a sipper cup because he was suffering from Parkinson's. I think it's just the array of cruelty that that was meted to him. I don't know how any forget about a person, how can institutions become so cruel? What has led to this kind of perversion? What has led to this kind of vulgarity and cruelty that has meted out to this man? This is yeah. When the news came in the afternoon, it just numbed me to such an extent that yeah. I remember in the second week of May when there was a need to push for bail, etc. We were many people, we were all trying our level best, scrambling in different ways. Even just last month, I'm talking, just 2 months ago, I'm talking, just scrambling in different ways, trying to get some people to act so that bail can be given. And yet it all just seems like hitting a wall constantly. It seems everyone was trying, many people were trying in their different ways, reaching out. But the fact that we hit a wall constantly, repeatedly, and never seem to come out of that wall, it spoke a lot about the kind of state we are in. And it's really a point, it's really a moment in our lifetime that we have to really imbibe what he stood for and take this fight forward. I think in a way it's very sad, it's very agonizing. I don't know, it's just somewhere a cross between anger and grief that I'm not able to pinpoint what the exact emotion is. But I can definitely say that one thing, we need to use this point as it is really a turning point, if you ask me, in a way, for a struggle for justice, for a struggle for equality, for a struggle for just humanity. I think it's struggle against perversion, struggle for all those things that our constitutional values stand for. My last meeting was with him in 2018. I had gone to Bagacha after the police had come, Maharashtra police had come and taken away all those things. And I remember sitting, and he offered tea, and we were just eating tea and biscuits, and he was feeding the dogs around there. And he was just so calm and composed about the whole thing. I couldn't just fathom that an 80-year-old man who had to go through all that kind of trauma that the police had done to him. And yet he was just saying that what we should continue, people who are in the position should constantly continue to speak for those who can't. And that's what I was doing. So what's wrong? It's okay, it'll be fine. I don't know what will happen, but let's see. That was the kind of attitude. And that attitude was just something else. I don't know how many people in this world will have that kind of an attitude, courage, which is the platform for which is just compassion and fairness. And what was he asking? He was asking that he was saying things like there are so many under trials, Dalits and Adivasis were struggling inside, who've been illegally confined in prisons, based on the study that Meera was talking about, and many other things. He was asking for Tribes Advisory Council to be meeting more often, which is there in our constitution. What was he? Anyway, I don't know what else to say. I'll just stop here, but we just hope. Yeah.
Thanks, Rajendran. I think, as you identified some of the struggles that Stan fought for, they were all within the framework of the Constitution. So I think the real revolution now is to actually assert a right to make the Constitution work for us. That's the idea of citizenship that he believed in. The Constitution may be flawed in some respects, but by and large, it's probably one of the better constitutions this world has given itself across human time. And that this regime is doing everything possible to destroy it was probably one of the most troubling aspects of the struggle that we are all going through. And some of our comrades are doing that from within prison, which is not the most likable of places, of course. But I think one aspect of Stan that we have repeatedly highlighted through this evening is this sense of clarity without losing the sense of urgency. It was not a laid-back approach. It was an approach which was not also rushing headlong into something which you couldn't see far. But here was a man who actually did it in a way that he could carry so many people with him, and in ways that are almost completely non-intrusive. His life, the way he conducted himself, the way he spoke about things, even the letters that he has written from prison recently, I think they speak to multiple levels of the the consciousness. And I really hope that when tomorrow his case is called, I don't know what the judges are going to say. I wish that becomes a turning point for all judges who sort of keep adjourning bail applications. And I think of so many of our other comrades who are wrongly in prison, and they fought for the right things. So yeah, this is one of the, I guess we owe it to Stan, and we owe it to all of our friends who are inside this struggle that each of us should be part of. I did see Suresha. If you can kindly unmute and speak, please.
Yeah, thanks, Leo, for inviting me to talk. But I wish to speak in Kannada, as a federal government should understand that each language of the state has its own share and its own importance. In view of that, I wish to voice my opinion in the language of this state, that is Kannada. ಬಂಧುಗಳೇ, ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರ ನಿಧನ ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಆಘಾತದ ಸುದ್ದಿ. ಒಬ್ಬ 84 ವರ್ಷದ ವೃದ್ಧ ಒಂದು ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ದೇಶದ್ರೋಹಿ ಅನ್ನಿಸ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತಾದ್ರೆ, ಒಬ್ಬ 84 ವರ್ಷದ ವೃದ್ಧನನ್ನ UAPA ಅನ್ನುವ ಒಂದು ಅನಾಗರಿಕವಾದ ಕಾನೂನಿನ ಮೂಲಕ ಬಂಧನಕ್ಕೆ ಒಳಪಡಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದಾದ್ರೆ, ಇದು ಒಂದು ದೇಶ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಸರ್ವಾಧಿಕಾರದ ಕಡೆಗೆ ವಾಲ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನುವುದರ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣ ಸೂಚನೆ. ಮತ್ತು ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಅವರು ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ, ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕುಡಿಯುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಲೋಟದಿಂದ ಕುಡಿಯುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಅಂದಾಗ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಕೊಡುವುದಕ್ಕೆ 2 ತಿಂಗಳು ಸಮಯಾವಕಾಶ ಬೇಳುವಂತಹ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಂಗ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಮತ್ತು ಕಾನೂನು ಸುವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ, ಈ NIA ಮತ್ತು ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ, ಇವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಕೂಡ ಒಟ್ಟು ಭಾರತದ ಪ್ರಜೆಗಳ ಮೂಲಭೂತ ಹಕ್ಕನ್ನ ಉಲ್ಲಂಘಿಸಿರುವುದು ಪ್ರತಿ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲೂ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರ ಸಾವು ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಎಚ್ಚರಿಕೆಯ ಗಂಟೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಈ ಎಚ್ಚರಿಕೆಯ ಗಂಟೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿರಬಹುದಾದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಶಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಒಗ್ಗೂಡಿಸಿ ಇಂತಹ UAPA ಅನ್ನುವ ಕಾನೂನನ್ನ ಹಿಂತೆಗೆದುಕೊಳ್ಳುವುದಕ್ಕೆ, ಸೆಡಿಷನ್ ಕಾನೂನುಗಳನ್ನ ಹಿಂತೆಗೆದುಕೊಳ್ಳುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಒತ್ತಡ ಹೇರುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಹೋರಾಟಕ್ಕೆ ದಾರಿಯಾಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಬರೀ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರಷ್ಟೇ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅವರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸರಿಸುಮಾರು 115 ಜನರನ್ನ ಭೀಮಾ ಕೊರೆಗಾಂವ್ ಚಳುವಳಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಿದ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮಾವೋವಾದಿಗಳ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸಂಪರ್ಕ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನುವ ಸುಳ್ಳು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಬಂಧನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಡಲಾಗಿದೆ. ಈವರೆಗೆ ಹಲವರ ವಿಷಯ ಇನ್ನೂ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಂಗದ ಎದುರಿಗೆ ಚರ್ಚೆಗೆ ಕೂಡ ಬಂದಿಲ್ಲ. 1.5-2 ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ಇಂತಹ ಜನ ಜೈಲಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಬಂಧನದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂಥದ್ದು ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ಒಂದು ಒಟ್ಟು ನಾಗರಿಕ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ಅವಮಾನ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಭಾವಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಯಾವುದೇ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಅನುಮಾನವಿದ್ರೂ ಅವು ಚರ್ಚೆಯಾಗಬೇಕು. ನ್ಯಾಯಾಂಗ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗುವುದಾದ್ರೆ ನ್ಯಾಯಾಂಗ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ಯಾವುದರ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದಿದ್ರೆ ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಚರ್ಚೆಯ ಮೂಲಕ ಯಾವುದೇ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇರಬಹುದಾದ ಭಿನ್ನಾಭಿಪ್ರಾಯಗಳನ್ನ ಪರಿಹರಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. ಬದಲಿಗೆ ಆತನಿಗೆ ಕೋವಿಡ್ ತಗಲಿ, ಕೋವಿಡ್ನಿಂದ ಮುಂದುವರೆದು ಆತ ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಅಗಲುವವರೆಗೆ ಒಂದು ದೇಶ ಕಾಯ್ತದೆ ಅಂತಾದ್ರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅನ್ನುವುದಿದೆಯೇ, ಅದು ಪ್ರಜೆಗಳಿಗಾಗಿ ಇದೆಯೇ ಅಥವಾ ತನ್ನ ಕಡೆಯವರಿಗಾಗಿ, ತನ್ನನ್ನ ಬೆಂಬಲಿಸುವವರಿಗಾಗಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅನ್ನುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಇದೆಯೇ ಅನ್ನುವುದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಈ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರ ಅಗಲಿಕೆ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಒಂದು ಜಾಗೃತಿಯ ಗಂಟೆಯಾಗಲಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ಹೋರಾಟವನ್ನ ಮತ್ತಷ್ಟು ತೀವ್ರಗೊಳಿಸೋಣ. ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿಯ ಹಾಗೆ ಬಂಧನದಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜೀವಗಳ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹೋರಾಟದ ಗುರಿಯಾಗಬೇಕು. ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರ ಬಿಡುಗಡೆಯ ಮೂಲಕವೇ ನಾವು ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರ ಸಾವಿಗೆ ಉತ್ತರವನ್ನ ಕಂಡುಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೇನೆ. ಈ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರನ್ನ ಕಳೆದುಕೊಂಡದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ವಿಷಾದವನ್ನ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸ್ತಾ, ಈ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ ಅವರನ್ನ ಕಿತ್ತುಕೊಂಡ ಹಾಗೆ ಉಳಿದವರನ್ನ ಕಿತ್ತುಕೊಳ್ಳದೇ ಇರಲಿ ಅನ್ನುವ ಮಾತನ್ನ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ, ಈ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನಾಡುವಂತಹ ಅವಕಾಶ ಒದಗಿಸಿಕೊಟ್ಟ ಈ ESG ಗೆಳೆಯರಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳನ್ನು ತಿಳಿಸ್ತಾ ನನ್ನ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನು ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. I have to unmute Leo.
Suresha is a well-known filmmaker and activist and writer, and he chose to express his, himself in the language of our region. And he said, it's a big agatha. Agatha is like it's more than tragedy. It is devastating that Stan Swamy has been taken away, 84-year-old man, on grounds that he is an anti-national. And he calls the UAPA, under which he was framed, an anti-civilizational law. And it is therefore indicative of authoritarianism, and that authoritarianism has taken a grip on our nation. He also says that the fact that it took 2 months to even provide him a straw, and through a litigious process, is indicative of how police power through the NIA and other such agencies is being abused to violate the fundamental rights of not just Stan and those who have been framed under the Bhima Karagaon case, but just about every citizen. But he also said Stan's death and the way he has died, the way he was, not let to live, is a big warning bell. And we must find ways to tackle this commonly used charge of sedition. And those ways must be based on discussions, acknowledgement of disagreements, but a concurrence and agreement that we cannot allow this nation to slip any further. He said also something very poignant, that this man contracted COVID in prison, and he warned that he would probably contract that disease, that dreaded disease. But the nation waited for him to die in prison, and it did nothing at all to ensure that he could come out. So Suresha expresses regret, strong regret, that we have allowed this to happen, but we should not allow the struggle, our struggle, from which they have snatched Stan from us, but we should not allow them to snatch others who are inside. Thank you, Suresh. May I invite Geeta Sen? Are you there? I do see that there are a lot of messages that have come in the chat box. If anyone would like to speak, Stephen Farrell from the Asian Indigenous Peoples platform. So while someone gets ready to speak, I will read out what Claude has just written. Let's form Stan Swamy Associates for the rights and welfare of under trials in each state. I will get 5 lawyers from Goa this week on a panel, and then ensure that this panel begins the process of assessing the status of all under trial prisoners in the state of Goa. Government wanted to get rid of Stan. It will now have to face Stan in every state of the Indian Union. Any offers from other states? We can share our work on Zoom periodically. We can have a small office in Delhi, which will ensure our presence in the Supreme Court when the need arises. Sagari, would you like to say something? In some ways, our silence is also a way of allowing us to collect the energies needed to take the struggle on. I know that Asma is here, and Asma wanted to play a song. It's a brief song. Would it be possible, Varun? I have shared the link with you.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you and me. Said I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he. From Salt Lake City, Joe, said I, him standing by my side. They framed you on a murder charge, says Joe, I never died. Said Joe, I never died. The copper bosses shot you, Joe. They filled you full of lead. Takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe, and I ain't dead. Said Joe, and I ain't dead. Standing there as big as life, him smiling with his eyes, said he what they forgot to kill went on to organize, went on to organize. From San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where working men defend their rights, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you'll find Joe Hill.
Thanks for bringing such a precise sentiment to this meeting. Thanks, Asma. Krishna Prasad has raised his hand, so.
Yes, can you hear me, please?
Yeah.
Yes, I just have a couple of points to make, not even points, just a couple of observations. I moved into Chennai on work in the middle of April. And one of the most heartwarming things I saw in Chennai was something I had not seen in Delhi, Bombay, or Bangalore. And that was posters in support of Father Stan Swamy in the tinier nooks and corners of Chennai. And it was really so nice to see those amateurish but really heartfelt posters in support of Father Stan. And that's point one. The other thing I wanted to mention, because I have not heard it so far, and pardon me if it's been said before, but a lot of connections, a lot of parallels have been made between 1975 and what has been going on since 2014. And to me, Father Stan's sad demise, and I unfortunately am not in this position to be very charitable about this. I cannot really come to celebrate this. It's my failing, but there is something really deep that has touched me. But so I cannot celebrate this. So let me just say this. So a lot of parallels have been made between 1975 and 2014 to now. And the one connection I find, and I hope this might be of some interest, is that in 75 too, we had something similar. The death of Snehalata Reddy. Snehalata was a very close friend of George Fernandez. She was an actress. She was a theater artist. She was a resident of Bangalore. And she was married to the filmmaker and mathematician Pattabhirama Reddy. And Snehalata was a stunningly beautiful woman. And she got embroiled in the Baroda dynamite case in 1975 onwards, 75, 76, 77. And the short point why I want to make is that just like Father Stan met his end in 2021 at the hand of a very brutal system, Snehalata likewise was similarly killed by the system in 77. She was a severe asthmatic patient. She was given very irregular treatment in hospital. Although her name was not in the chart sheet, she was jailed. And eventually, just 5 days before she died, I think the jail authorities or the government of the day got the message and released her. And in January of 1977, she passed away. That's a connection I see really, to complete the circle between 1975 and the current regime. Is this one death, while first of Snehalata Reddy at that time, because the authorities could not get themselves to release a very severely afflicted person, and likewise now you see with Father Stan. That's the second point. And the third and final point I'll make is this, each time there is an Islamist terrorist attack or some other terrorist attack, we in this country, especially the Hindus of this country, are always demanding that the sane and sober and moderate elements of that religion or any other religion stand up. And I do believe we've come to a point in India's democracy just now where some really searching questions need to be asked of our various swamis, badas, yogis, and all of the great representatives of the Hindu religion as to what is their stand at what is being done in the name of the religion to the basic DNA of this democracy. Are they in favor of this brutalization of this democracy? Can we get a bunch of these Hindu representatives to speak up? I am a Hindu. I am proud to be a Hindu, but I do believe what we are seeing exposes, it's very easy for us to say that, let's not confuse Hinduism with Hindutva. I think that difference is now really being erased in the minds of many people. And I do think the time is now opportune for Hindu leaders, such as they may be, if there are any, and I've not heard them in the last 7 years, for them to speak up about this brutalization of this religion in the name of this religion consistently and so conspicuously. And I say this for one reason. Whatever we may have reservations about any religion, I would like to believe that Hinduism, like most religions, tells us to be kind, to be courteous, to care for the elderly and the aged. And really, the question we must ask of these great Hindu representatives, and there are a dozen on every street of this country, is, does this religion allow this kind of stuff to happen? And I think we must close, and I will close by also remembering Father Stan Swamy, whom I did not know, but I read about and I followed him. And I do think that I speak for the better part of Hinduism, the unbrutalized part of Hinduism, when I make these points. The point of the fact that the marginalized in Chennai are remembering him. Secondly, his passing away is really, completing this circle with 1975. Thirdly, it's time for Hinduism's great leaders, if there are any, and I doubt if there are some, for them to speak up about this brutalization in the name of this religion, which basically distorts everything that is good and great about this religion in the eyes of the world. And I will only mourn Father Stan Swamy. It's impossible for me to celebrate this kind of a passing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Krishna Prasad. Very sharp thoughts about how we should actually understand our situation, and it also helps us move forward. And I feel that, I mean, looking at all the comments that have been coming through the chat box, it does seem like we have waited too long for a really fundamental turning point to take place. And I think Stan always pointed out that, I mean, look at the way in which he used the PESA, for instance, or the Forest Rights Act. I mean, this was not a language of just rhetoric. This was a language of such great specificity that he actually would say that relief matters. And he would ensure that relief, the pathway to relief was evident to everyone, was part of that movement. So I think when I hear you say how many of the institutions and even the spiritual institutions have been sort of confused or rendered into state of confusion and even dismembered, I guess that's a good starting point. There's only one way to go, and that's going up to a better ground than where we are at now. So it's really something to think about what you've shared. Yeah. I invite, I would think that, though we said indefinite, what we meant to say was this is an indefinite tribute to Stan. And I think the Zoom tribute may, I mean, we can end very soon in the next 5 minutes. But the idea of paying tribute to Stan should continue through our actions, through our efforts, through our everything that we said today, we should make happen. So I see that Father Alvin is there. You obviously knew for the Stan. Would you like to share some thoughts as a fellow Jesuit, perhaps? Are you there? Would anyone else like to say any words? Any thoughts to share? I request all of you to just hold a I mean, actions matter, and I think action is the way to really pay tribute. But let's just have a moment of silence, a minute for Stan, and let us keep him in our thoughts and prayers, and ensure that we continue his work. Just a moment. So thank you all for coming in at such short notice. And if you feel that you want to be part of, at least two ideas have come out very clearly, that we all resolve that we will fight against the UAPA, make sure that it is repealed. And I would hope that that is not just the UAPA, but every possible instrument of hate and suppression that is sort of being given a lot of strength in current times. I I think the other idea that came was what Claude has proposed. I have put our email ID there. If you all would like to be part of this process, what Claude said is that in every state we should, in memory of Stan, create a center with a few lawyers and focus our attention on under trials and their state, and ensure that those who have been particularly suffering because of their politics, not necessarily violent, but the politics we all agree with, we must fight for their either they get quick trial or they should be out on jail. Out on bail, definitely not in jail. So those are two clear thoughts that have come out. I'm sure there are many, many more ideas that will come to us. And finally, I think the sentiment is very simple, that we need to come together in whatever form that we can manage and ensure that this country is rid of hatred, fascism, and suppression of freedoms. That would be the best tribute that to Stan and so many others who have passed on fighting for our freedoms. So thank you all. And there is a 9-minute YouTube link which is in the chat room. Meera, are you suggesting we play it here or?
No, I'm not sure if you'd want to play it here, but
it's there.
People can view it later as well.
So we will share with you all the notes that come to us from the chat room if you send your email to estresearch@estgindia.org. Just put a line in the subject saying it's for Stan. Okay, and then we'll make sure that each of you get the chat that has taken place. We'll also write back on what other actions can happen as we move forward. Again, let's keep that Stan in our thoughts, not just for today, but every day. And yeah, in solidarity, and let's stay together. Thank you. And have a good night.